everybody. My name is Laura Heywood. I'm also Broadway Girl NYC. It's my Twitter handle, but it's also been my secret identity for 6 years. It all came from wanting to find my happy place. We all know that term, go to your happy place. And mine, even as a kid in California, was always Broadway. I would wear out cassettes of cast albums. When my parents brought me to New York on vacation when I was 12, I fell in love even more. And I came home wanting to dance, but that didn't go very well. Even so, I did go on to study acting and theater history in college. But when I moved to New York in 2005, it wasn't for theater at all. I actually was brought here to produce and co-host a serious satellite radio show based on Maxim magazine, which, as you can imagine, doesn't have a ton of crossover into the musical theater world. So going to the theater was what I did in my spare time. And I mean all of my spare time. I saw 8 different casts of Rent. I went to Spring Awakening 14 times, and every single time I stayed after to get my playbill signed. I waited over 12 hours for tickets to see Hair at Shakespeare in the Park, and I still didn't get them. By 2009, I lived in Hell's Kitchen, and I have to tell you, the best part of that was that it was actually faster to go home at intermission to pee than it was to wait in line in the ladies' room. And the second best part was that I was neighbors with all of the chorus kids and a lot of the big stars from Broadway as well. And it felt like Broadway was following me as much as I was following it. But when I found myself in line behind Raul Esparza at Jamba Juice, or finally won the Wicked lottery, or met someone really cool at the stage door, all I wanted to do was tell everyone I knew. And not that many of my friends cared that much. So then I read a book based on the restaurant industry, an anonymous blog by a waiter. And it was really cool to read, especially because he could have been anybody. And I thought, oh, it'd be cool if something like that existed for Broadway. So more or less on a whim, I started this Twitter account. It was created to chronicle my life as a Broadway fan, an outlet, a way for me to keep track of the shows I saw, share the excitement I felt when I had these brushes with greatness. I used Twitter to broadcast my internal theater-related squeals of glee, this fangirling, essentially. By the end of my first week, I had almost 100 followers. And then a few months in, actors I loved were tweeting back and forth with me. Then Rock of Ages mentioned me in an email blast, and BroadwayWorld.com got in touch, and my follower count grew into the thousands. Ooh, that's bad news. Meanwhile, my professional responsibilities at Sirius were growing significantly. I went from being a Maxim producer to an executive producer, a manager, and then a senior manager, and ended up as director of talent and industry relations, which meant I was dealing with celebrities every day at work. This is when Broadway Girl NYC became a separate persona. I started referring to her in the third person. In fact, I jokingly called her my roommate in conversation after a guy I dated told me that being around me was like having 2 different women in the room at the same time. So she became my alter ego, sort of the Batman to my Bruce Wayne, you might say. And like any successful alter egos, Broadway Girl NYC and Laura Heywood led very separate lives and took great care to distance themselves from each other. Or I should say, I took great care to distance them from each other. I, Laura Heywood, worked at SiriusXM in an important corporate job, leading logistics from visits from movie stars, athletes, celebrity chefs, and quite a few Broadway stars. Meanwhile, I, Broadway Girl NYC, was tweeting about dream casting cult musical revivals and hanging out at schmackeries and dealing with long, cold lines at TKTS. I was tweeting every day, but I had to leave out my best stories because they were based on professional access that Broadway Girl didn't have. Because by then, she had become an aspirational character, a kind of archetype of the Broadway fan. It became all about spreading joy. For the people who couldn't be there, who didn't get to see the shows as often as I did, and who weren't experiencing those exhilarating brushes with greatness, Broadway Girl NYC has no troubles. She has no stress about work, traffic, bills, weather, or anything else except making it to the show on time. By donning the mask of Broadway Girl NYC, I, Laura Heywood, can access my happy place as often as I want, and I can share it. So, as Jim mentioned, I have over 21,000 followers on Twitter now. I also think of it as my happy place, having over 21,000 residents. And today, as I publicly acknowledge that I am Laura Heywood, and yes, I am Broadway Girl NYC, I'm taking these two identities and merging them into one for the first time. It's scary and it's exciting, but mostly it's weird to be able to talk about her in the first person. So I, Broadway Girl NYC, first time I've said that, can't wait to keep on talking and tweeting about how much I love Broadway. Thank you.